My great-grandmother tried to warn me. I was too little to understand. I was about 5 years old the first time that she told me a story about growing up in the Great Depression and being so thrilled with her 9 brothers and sisters to receive apples and oranges as their presents on Christmas morning. She warned her daughter, her granddaughter, and her great-granddaughter to not trust anything a politician says, regardless of what party they come from. And because I was 5 and more interested in sitting in her wheelchair and watching the daytime cooking television shows that were on when we were visiting her, I did not pay attention. My deceased father was autistic and obsessed with constitutional law. The day that I came out as bi, he gave me a 2-hour lecture on law precedent and legal cases that dealt with queer rights. I remember being 10 the day after the 2008 presidential election and waking up in a sweat, begging my mom to know whether it was Barack Obama or John McCain who had won. In 2010, while my parents were working 16-hour days to make sure that our mortgage was paid, I was online watching the Young Turks, paying attention to the Citizens United Supreme Court case. At 11 years old, my autistic ass signed up for the wolf pack with the Young Turks in the hope that maybe the adults that were responsible for my future would figure out a way to fix it. That solution never came. When I was 17 years old, I was sitting in the front of my AP Gov class, arguing with fellow classmates of mine in 2015 over the fervent belief that I held that the Democrats would pull the rug out from Donald Trump early, like they needed to prevent this very obvious disaster from happening. And I remember being furious that they did not believe in these institutions the way that I had full-hearted faith that these rules would save us. When I was 18 years old, I stayed up well past midnight in the throes of misery with my own friends while we watched Donald Trump get elected to become president of the United States. It was literally like a funeral the next day on campus. I waited patiently, ever so fucking patiently, as Democrats screamed from the rooftops again and again, we're waiting for the right opportunity. I waited, I learned, I listened through my fucking degree, and nothing changed. In fact, they let Trump do worse than I could ever conceivably imagine by quite literally killing millions of people at the end of his presidency. You cannot convince me that that man is not responsible for every COVID death. And while my constitutional law obsessed father, who loved me and taught me my own moral values, suffered from brain cancer, he was refused the chemotherapy that he needed because that administration couldn't manage basic epidemiology. He died in July of 2020. And thank God he did, because he would hate this world. In 2020, I stayed up all night working for Associated Press in the hopes that I could make a difference and watch the course correction actually happen. I was so relieved when Donald Trump lost and Joe Biden won. Not because I believed Joe Biden was a good candidate, because it was better than the worst alternative possible, as they always scream from the rooftops. I got into an argument with the same friend from when I was 17 years old, because I was so furious that he would have the audacity to tell me that this wasn't going to change things for the better. And I was clinging on to hope so hard. And then I watched for the entirety of the Biden administration as he walked back every single promise he made to his constituents. With the literal crown sitting on his head, he didn't have the fucking balls to stack the Supreme Court or push legislation through or do literally anything. And when he ran for office again, I was fucking furious. Okay? The fucking audacity to lie to people. And at 80 years old, tell people, I was wrong 4 years ago that I'm not going to be capable for a second term. I'm going to do this shit. When he didn't even do this shit the first time. Watched as he torpedoed any possible momentum Kamala Harris could possibly have. And then on the advice of Joe Biden's advisors, Kamala Harris torpedoing herself into a neoconservative. All that progressive momentum. And for what? Denying trans people their rights, lying and saying that Palestinian people are not being genocided. Every single person, even slightly to the right of me, made it excruciatingly clear how much of a crisis this vote really was. And I did what I had to do. I voted for Kamala. And instead of being surprised this time when she lost, I was aware and disappointed, but certainly not surprised or confused by this outcome. Because at this point, I had spent almost 2 decades of my own life watching the Democratic Party undermine its own voter base. We are now almost 50% of the way through Project 2025, which is the absolute roadmap to American fascism. 50% of the way, and we are 9 months into Donald Trump's 4-year presidency, at best, if we have elections at the end of this. And even my most liberal family members are coming back to family group chats and saying they have no plan. Well, they were screaming, crying, begging, and throwing up for us to vote for them and line their coffers. They made no plan to be an opposition party. I am tired of these parodies of human beings spitting on the people that vote for them, worship them, need them the most, and are desperate for help. I am tired of all of the Democratic leaders complaining that people don't vote for them when it is their fucking job to vote on policy for us. Every single person that I know is terrified because they are having every meaningful civil right stripped away from them. And they want to sit there and bathe in champagne while we suffer. And real talk, I am tired of the liberal people piling into other leftist comments, complaining if you had just gotten in line, this would have worked out. And before you start shit-talking me, I've taken more comparative public policy than you could even fucking dream of. So do not start with your incrementalism bullshit. I want to be very clear that when I say this does not mean that I will ever be voting for a Republican or a conservative. I will never in my life vote for another Democrat. Siding with the wolves and screaming that they're the only way the sheep will be saved is a fucking joke at this point. Democratic lawmakers stand for nothing other than themselves and their own monetary gain. Whether we call it a social contract in political science or the magic circle in game design, you are lying to people and changing the rules of the game and the system to benefit yourselves in every way possible. Democrats, stop asking us to help you. You are the people in the positions of power. It is your fucking job to fix this. I know my great grandma may be spinning in her fucking grave, but at least I finally got the point. It is never your constituents' job to save you from yourself. I will trust American institutions again when a single meaningful leader within the federal level of the Democratic Party does literally anything to stop this. But I will not be holding my fucking breath.